What's up, man?
Wow, that is creepy.
Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, you sound pretty clear. So, what are we going to discuss this evening? Obviously, you and I disagree on veganism, so let's not waste too much time. Let's get right into it. Do you want to lay out a position? How do you want to do this?
Well, like, where do you stand on veganism? Like, which parts do you mostly disagree with? Like, do you agree with anything at all?
Well, the way I see it, the arguments for veganism, um, I don't have a problem with veganism. I mean, it's not like it's any skin off my nose if somebody wants to be vegan. I mean, you're vegan. That doesn't affect me at all. The only time I tend to sort of chirp up is when people tell me I have to go vegan too.
Right. Do you like? What's the most common argument that people say as to like why you should go vegan? Like the ethics, or
The one that I'm interested in most is the ethics. Yeah, for sure. I mean, I see people like Vegan Gains making health arguments and stuff, and I will admit at the outset that I'm not equipped to debate health or nutrients, as Savarage would say. But yeah, I'll go with you on the ethics.
so like I mean, from the ethics standpoint, obviously, like how do you think that would have been like the appropriate way to handle like ethical issues of like that we've had in the past of like racism and slavery and like women's rights? Like it's basically this, like, it's the same argument, like they're telling you to do something differently. Do you, like would you say that you would have been already someone that like is already on the right side of that, or like if you weren't?
Oh, I would argue that I mean, how are we measuring what is ethical? Because to my understanding, the ethical vegan argument, or the like one that pertains to morality, is going to be something along the lines of don't kill animals when you don't need to, right?
Yeah, that's like the more realistic application of it.
Mhm. So I would submit then at this point that even though I'm not vegan, it's highly likely that I'm responsible for less animal deaths than you are in terms of diet.
And that's just because you buy like locally raised animals, things like that.
No, I don't buy anything.
Oh, so you like raise your own animals?
No,
Oh, what do you eat then?
I grow all my own vegetables, and in order to keep those vegetables, it entails that I kill animals, so I just eat those animals. I mean, would you support an argument that that says that we shouldn't kill animals in order to protect crops?
No, I mean that's definitely like a hard thing. Like, I mean, my response to that would be like we need to like develop technology that doesn't like make us rely on having to kill animals for crops as
So,
much,
so,
like
so
vertical
we're
farming, things like that.
straight. We're straight into pie in the sky then. So, in terms of the actual situation that we have right now, my system is responsible for fewer deaths of animals than your system, and
Well,
that's
yeah, but
that's the metric that you're
right,
using.
yeah, that's so like, what resources do you have? Like, do you have like a lot of land? I'm assuming.
I have 10 acres of my own, and I'm responsible for 2,000 acres.
And do you grow like mostly vegetables in there?
Yeah,
Wait, but do you have
like
chicken? Do you have
I
chickens and
can't
things like?
grow cows, so
Well,
yeah.
yeah. I mean, like you could have like a cow or two like in a barn, like on the side or something. Like that's that's what I see most people have.
No. All of the vegetable crops that I eat, I grow myself, and this is documented. This is something I can provide you evidence for, so that you don't think I'm just making it up or something. And in order to protect those crops, I have to kill a small amount of animals just on my small parcel of land. But I have permission to shoot over 2,000 acres of land to protect the crops from the animals that would eat what you want to eat if I didn't do that. So the way I'm looking at it, but it's not really the way I'm looking at it, it's the way it is. If I don't do what I do, you won't have the food that you want to eat. So unless there's some sort of argument as to why I shouldn't do that, you're going to starve.
No, right. Like we're like as humans, like we need to take up like some amount of land, and like trying to be efficient, like plant growers. Like we can't have anything else growing there besides that one plant. It's obviously like how density and efficiency work. Like I tried to be like pretty reasonable in that argument, but so like, have you tried other ways of like trying to keep animals away? Like, what kind of animals do you kill? Like, mostly rodents or
rabbits and pigeons?
Really, pigeons?
Of course. Why are you surprised?
I mean, I see like gardens, like in town and stuff, that have like birds nests like around them and stuff. So I assume like that's what it's for.
No, I mean, of the avian species that attack crops, pigeons are definitely your biggest bugbear. No doubt about it. So I have to shoot those, right, to protect the crops that you want to buy.
Right, but like, could you like use a drone instead to like chase like this? What is it, like a flock of pigeons? Is that what it's called, a flock? Could you try that?
In the case of pigeons, it is called a flock, yeah, but no, not if not if you've seen the numbers that descend upon the crops. That's just impractical.
So how do you like shoot them if that's like that many?
Shotgun. You get down in, if you're lucky, about 10 at a time. Very cheap way to control that species, and I get to eat them afterwards.
So what animal are you shooting again?
Hang on, Ping. This is between me and OC.
No problem.
It was pigeons.
It's all right. We don't have a moderator.
Yeah,
so
there's no crowd here. I mean, like, I would say, like, obviously, I don't know if a drone would. Obviously, you would have to like try it out and compare. I mean, that's what
you
I
mean
would try
from
and
like
do.
a deterrent kind of thing, right?
Like I've heard of like they've like deployed drones in airports to keep birds away from airports to help like keep down the bird strikes in those situations. And like from what I've read, it seems like that's working. So that's the reason why I ask.
Yeah, because
like if it doesn't work as
controllable. You can control the direction of the drone so that it doesn't hit the engine of the aircraft. You can't do that with actual birds.
No, like the drones like chase birds away from the airport like completely. Like they keep them like away from the area.
Okay. So now the airports are safe. Let's try to apply that to crops.
Well, yeah, that would be like my suggestion. Like from a vegan standpoint, like if I was in that position, like that's what I would try and do. Like obviously, it's not reasonable. Well, if it works, I mean, if there's some indication as to it possibly work, and if it works better, like why not? Like if it works better, wouldn't that be
it
a
doesn't
better
work
thing?
better.
Well, yeah, I mean that's fine.
It's more expense to start with.
Well, yeah, I mean it's kind of how sometimes you gotta invest in stuff, but that's fair.
Yeah, it's kind of impractical. So I mean, would you Like, I hate to do this because sometimes vegans object when I do this, but I do think it's an important question. Is it the eating of meat that you have a problem with, or is it the way that that meat is arrived at?
I mean, I would definitely say even like it wouldn't really matter like for most people, especially like if you're getting calories from like something that was gonna die anyway, like it's guaranteed to die, like it's basically roadkill, like at that point.
Yeah.
And you were to get your calories from that instead of like buying products at the grocery store, you're obviously like you're not consuming at that point. That obviously is more ideal. Yeah, I mean, I, I honestly don't really like have like that's a roadkill situation. Like, I don't know how
Yeah.
many vegans would actually object to that.
Yeah,
I mean,
I don't think many
have
do. I
people.
mean, there are some, but I mean, just not that many. So I'm just wondering what your position is.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I wouldn't see that at all. I mean, I think that would be more ideal is if the only animals we were to eat were the ones that we had to kill for our own crop like production.
Okay, well, those are the only ones that I kill, and it's less than the amount that you kill.
Yeah, I mean, I would say like
So I'm
in that case,
morally
it's
superior
just
by default then.
well, my argument would be that I'm not in a position to like acquire that kind of like those kinds of calories. Like I have to buy everything. Like I live in a tiny ass apartment in town. Like I don't really
Okay.
have a choice. Like I try to buy as local as
You
possible.
do.
That's for sure.
You have a choice. It's just too inconvenient for you.
Well, what is that like to change my lifestyle?
Yeah.
I mean, is that what you did?
Well, fortunately for me, I was raised in an area which affords me the ability to do this, but that doesn't take anything away from my argument.
Well, it's insisting for someone to change just because they're not like they weren't put in that position. Like that's not necessarily saying that I have a choice. Like yeah, I definitely could, especially living in the western country. But there's some
Then you
other
have a
issues that
choice. You just said you could, so
well,
you have the
it's
choice.
extremely difficult.
Okay.
I
So
mean
what?
like that's
What does
like
that matter? It's
asking those
extremely
kinds of
difficult for people to go
expectations of
vegan
like
too.
no, that's the argument. Is it's in most cases it isn't extremely difficult. Like that's the thing. For most people, like most people don't have 10 acres of land that that they've acquired like
But
through their
I
family and things like
understand.
that. Like, that's an
I
extremely
appreciate.
uncommon thing. Yeah, at this point in life.
Well, okay, so you buy your food in the supermarket, right?
Mostly, yeah.
Okay. So let's say that this is not me. This is me putting somebody else forward for you, and I know that these people exist. So somebody else who is on a strictly meat diet. Shall we just call it a carnivore diet for simplicity? They go to the supermarket and they buy a chicken. That's going to last them, let's say, a day. You go to the supermarket and you buy all of the things that you're going to buy. The crops that you've bought are responsible for more animal deaths in number than that carnivore person.
Hit him with the facts, dude.
Right,
So,
but
so your argument's still
from
facts.
no from the like the cumulative standpoint of everyone like getting their grains from one plot of land, like it still comes
No,
down on average to be less.
no, it doesn't. Why would you think that?
Well, like it would just basically scale down to everybody being able to get their grains from like the sources that you get them from, and at some point, like
Right.
it's never gonna be zero. Like that's obvious.
Oh, I
So
know
there's no.
it's not a zero-sum game. I
Well,
agree.
right. So like the ultimate goal is for everybody to get their vegetables and grains from the like technique that you can, and if there's a better technique, we should all like switch to that technique in the future.
Okay, so when are you going to switch to that technique? Because I'm already way ahead of you, right?
So like all the grains that you grow, like are you like essentially a subsistence farmer? Like do you not?
No, I'm not a
uh,
farmer. I don't grow grains.
Okay, well vegetables. I mean, I would say that's
Mhm.
still farming.
Well, on a small scale.
Yo, SD, catch me up on the argument I did. What's going on?
All right, it's just we're having a little debate. We don't have a moderator, so I don't want people to interrupt at the moment. Go ahead,
Okay.
OC.
Well, so like, what would your like calorie intake like ratio of like animals like to vegetables? Do you get any fruits? Do you have any fruits growing?
Yeah, I've got apple trees and stuff like that. Sure.
Right. So all the apples that you grow, you keep for yourself.
Well, not entirely. I mean, I give some to friends and family. There's,
Right.
big
So,
apple tree, so why not
well,
share?
right. Yeah. Like where I live, like there's fruit trees everywhere. They're basically in people's front yards, and there's so much fruit that if people don't pick it, like all the bears come in and they try to eat it, and then we have like a bear issue, and like we've had to like put down bears that keep coming into town, things like that.
Right.
Definitely not ideal. Um, but the reason why I ask is, what if somebody just grew apple trees, or just happened to have apple trees on their land, nothing else, and everybody else wanted apples. They had apples to give out. They give out those apples, and in return they get something else. Like again, like that would still be relatively the same issue.
Right. So
We would.
how are we measuring which diet is like morally superior then? Because it's always done on fewer deaths, right? Which seems like a reasonable metric to me.
Well, yeah. I mean, I guess like really the issue would be that the fact that you're eating the animals, instead of just like
Oh well,
accepting that it's crop death. Well, like
you've moved the
I think it is.
goalpost now. Then
No. I'm just like
yeah, you
hypothetically
have.
saying, like,
Okay.
I guess most vegans dismiss the crop death thing. Like they just say that because they don't buy it.
Yeah, but I mean, I already dismantled that argument earlier. But if you didn't see that, then I'm not going to hold you accountable for that. But that's easy to debunk.
Well, right. I mean, I don't know who says that like it's completely perfect. Like the
No,
like
no, we're not looking for
because you buy
perfection.
oats, that like there's absolutely like no animal deaths that occurred. But at the
Yes,
same
there are.
time,
Of course, there
no,
are.
no, I don't. I've never heard of like a vegan saying like that's the
You,
case.
oh, sorry. Well, I mean, who are you arguing on behalf of then?
Well, just the vegan community in general. Like,
So the vegan
what's
community doesn't think that there are deaths associated with the growth of oats on an industrial scale.
no, I don't know. Like, that's. It seems like that's what you're saying.
I'm saying that there are deaths associated with that.
Right. But like, how many people argue that point though? Like, how many vegans like say like?
And anyone who, well, actually, a lot of vegans do try to argue that because they don't see the deaths. They don't know what's involved in the production of oats, whereas I do.
Right. So what's wrong with someone saying like, and let's say you planted 10 more apple trees on your land, and you just had 10 more apple trees worth of apples. What's wrong with you selling those apples to someone in the city, like who would like just they their life situation doesn't allow them to live out in the country and have apple trees. They just have like no reasonable means to even do that. Like
Right?
what's
Nothing at all.
well, right, but that's the situation I'm in.
So you live on nothing but apples?
No, but I buy a little bit from everybody.
right? So in order, I mean, when you say a little bit from everybody, you already admitted that you buy most of your stuff from supermarkets.
Well,
So
yeah, I don't have
for
means to barter with anyone.
no, that's fine. I appreciate that. But in order for that produce to arrive on the shelves, the amount of animal deaths, and I'm not even gonna I'll give you the steel man, right? I'm not even going to include insects in it at this point. You are responsible for more animal deaths. You are paying for more animal deaths than your average meat eater.
The
So
average meat.
I'm
Wait.
struggling to see why this is morally
The average
superior.
meat eater getting their meat from where?
Well, that's a separate thing which we can get into, but I want to close off this bit first.
Well,
Do
no, like
you
I said, like
imagine
no, like
stuff that
that's the point.
right?
Is I contribute less than the average meat eater, and just because of like the fact that like
You don't.
even though well, right. So how? That's what I'm saying. Where does the average meat eater get their meat from to the point where they contribute to more animals' death than me?
The average. Sorry, say it again.
How does the average meat eater contribute to less animal death than me?
The average meat eater, when they're buying meat, is responsible for less animal deaths than your average vegan, which
Right.
you've already admitted that you are one of.
No. Well, how?
Yes, you
The,
have. It's recorded.
like,
You said
well,
that.
look, the average meat eater buys, like, let's say they buy pork. Like, that's one animal that's dead. Like, right there, right?
Mm-hmm. Right.
So, where did that pig come from? Like, what did it eat to get to that point?
Grass, mostly.
Well, okay, so in America, like, over 95% of pig, like, pork supply, so that's more than the majority of meat eaters, comes from piggeries in North Carolina, and most of those pigs eat just grains and, like, oats and shit.
Okay. Do
They
you know how
they
those?
don't eat grass because they live in
Do you
industrial buildings.
know? Do you know how those grains are arrived at? Because I'm going to bet
The
you as much
exact
money as you want that you don't.
Okay, well, go ahead and tell me then.
Right. The grains, quote unquote grains, that are fed to cows, pigs, not usually sheep, but some other species too. They are the leftover things that humans will not buy, therefore cannot be sold, and will not be eaten by humans. So they have to be put somewhere. I mean, I guess we could put them in a big heap and burn them, or dig a big hole in the ground and stick all of that in there. But it's generally accepted that they should be fed to animals that are willing to eat them. And that's where they get fed the grains. You seem to be laboring under the assumption that that grains and crops and all this are grown deliberately just so that we can feed them to animals, and that is utterly false.
Well, that's under the assumption that there's more animals on the planet than there are people.
No. Why would it involve that assumption?
Because if there's more
What's with
animals
that?
on the planet than there are people, then it would make sense to deduct that the
No.
majority of grains grown on the planet are going to animals instead of people.
That's not how it works. Look, in order to grow enough grains, right? Forget about meat for just a second, right? There is no meat. No animals exist. It's just humans, okay? We grow enough grains to feed all the humans, right? With growing that grain comes something that we call spoil, which is the crap stuff,
The
the
waste.
substandards, waste essentially. So while there are animals, it gets fed to them. If there weren't any animals, you would still have that spoil. You just wouldn't have anything to do with it. You could click your fingers and get rid of every, all forms of cattle, pigs, sheep, whatever. And we still grow the same amount of grains so that you vegans can have your food. We have the same amount of spoil. It's just now we've got nowhere to put it.
That's like totally not how it works in the United States. I can tell you that
I can't
like the majority
speak to
of
that,
corn,
but-
like in the United States, the largest grain exporter, first of all, around the world. Well, they were for some of them. But all our corn is subsidized, and it either goes to biofuels or it goes to being for cattle feed. Like
Right.
like cattle's in industrial operations eat corn grown in the United States on an industrial scale. Like that's how it works.
Yeah, because
Like, okay,
the United States has such a population that you have such a huge amount of spoil that you have to find something to do with it.
Well, that's just an argument for like we should grow more efficiently. Like on your we obviously can't grow on large. Like there's too much
No,
spoil on that large of a scale, so we should scale down a little bit.
well,
But, like,
it's the case.
okay, so like for my example, like just in quick googling, North Carolina has about 25 million pigs in their like piggery
Mhm.
operations, and there's only 10 million people living in North Carolina.
Right? Because the amount of spoil that comes from the grain produced to feed that amount of people is so huge that it has to go somewhere. I mean, have you ever grown a plant, like say just a little tomato plant indoors or something? You get non-viable fruits from that tomato plant, right? You get some that are viable, some that are not viable. What do you do with the non-viable ones? You feed them to something that will eat them.
No, yeah. Like I get the efficiency argument. Like it should be as efficient as possible, and that's never going to be perfect. Like again, it's
No,
just
I'm
argument.
not seeking perfection. I'm not looking for you to provide a perfect argument.
Well, you should seek perfection. It's just like honest to acknowledge that you're never going to get there.
Sure, but I'm still leagues ahead of you in terms of efficiency and animal deaths in
Right,
terms of
because
lowering the numbers.
because you were given resources that are leagues ahead of mine. That's what I'm saying.
Well-
and there's nothing wrong with
Well,
that. But you
who are
can't.
you debating? Are you debating me or are you debating the rest of the world?
No, I'm debating that people should do with the best they have. Like I'm saying that the people who are living in the same situation as me shouldn't contribute to animal. Like they shouldn't be buying animals because they could be buying plant meat or plant food instead, and that would be just one animal that's left. Like it's at least
it
one.
wouldn't.
It's at least one.
How
less.
many animals are going to have to die so that that plant can live? Do you have any idea? I mean, it's pretty clear that you don't, but I've got to ask it for the sake of
I just don't understand like the math equation of okay, we grow X amount of food to feed 100 million people, but
Mhm.
the waste from that is enough to
The
feed
waste from that
more
is
than
what gets
10 million animals or 100,000, like
yeah,
whatever I
because
said.
they will eat the stuff that humans will not eat, and while those animals exist, that's where we feed it, right? That's what gets done with it.
So where does the water they drink come from?
Usually rivers. I mean, where I live, I couldn't speak to where you live.
So if there's more animals on the planet than people, and they drink the same amount of water as a person on average, they would take
No,
up
they
more
drink
water than
way.
people.
Occasionally,
Why
can I
would
ask
you
you a
say that?
question? Can I ask you
Hang
a
on,
question?
hang on.
Well, okay.
No, hang on, stop, Quentin, because this is supposed to be between me and OC, and I don't want people interrupting at the moment. You can have a go in a minute. Go ahead, OC, sorry.
How does a cattle take up less water, like drink less water than a person? Like, it's a bigger
They don't
animal.
drink less water. Are we having a water shortage? Where's the issue?
Oh, there's plenty of water shortages where I'm coming, like where I live. It's like a serious.
Not where I live.
Well, right, but the majority of people live where I live.
Okay, so again, who are you debating? Are you debating me or are you debating them?
debating the idea of what's better for the majority of people.
So, provided I come out on top, I'm still going to be more ethical than you.
Yeah, based on the fact that you've been given better resources
Okay,
in life.
you said yeah. So
Yeah,
then
there's nothing wrong with that.
I don't need to go vegan then.
I mean, I would say that like you're in line with veganism like pretty well. Like,
No, I'm not, because I know what the definition is. I mean, well, actually, let's do that a little bit. What definition of veganism are you using?
to exploit animals is like to exploit the least amount of animals as possible or practically
Okay.
possible.
And I come out way ahead of you on that too.
Yeah, again, based on the fact that you've been given way more resources than I have. Like, what am I supposed to do about that?
I haven't been given anything. I don't know where you get this idea that I've been given something.
Well, you acquired it, right?
I worked for it.
Okay. I mean, that's fine. Like, there's plenty of people who work really hard in life and they basically work their life away and they get nothing in the end. That's, again, like,
Okay.
you acquired it somehow.
Yeah, through
You
hard work.
acquired
It's called the
resources.
fruits of your labor, dude. This is the lifestyle that I wanted, and when
So
I
you're
argue
saying
with
you're saying
vegans,
that every
I always
person
come out on top.
So you're saying that every person in the world can work as hard as you and acquire the same amount of resources as you to be just as ethical as you.
No. What I'm saying is that when I discuss this with vegans, it always turns out that by whatever metric we use, I turn out to be more ethical, even by the vegan standard.
Yeah, because they don't weigh in for the fact that you were acquired these
Of
extra
course,
resources that help you benefit.
you got caught off guard, which is what always happens.
No, I'm perfectly aware that there's people that are in much better positions than me to be like more sustainable than me.
Okay, so do you have an argument as to why I should go vegan then? So I'm guessing your answer is going to be no, based on what you just said. If you don't, then we can just end it here.
No, to be honest, not
this is
really.
why I said it wouldn't take long. And that's not me being cocky. I'm not trying to be a dick to you, genuinely. But this is what I get every fucking time. I've done this dozens and dozens of times, and this is how it always ends up.
Really, so like most people just don't object to that. Like that's like is
Well,
that
they
my understanding?
object, but they can't sustain their objection. They always end up. I'm, not trying to be funny or whatever, but they always end up losing the debate. So.
Right. So, like, what would you say? Like, if someone was to say, you're in line with veganism, like, why would you disagree with that?
Because it doesn't fit with the definition of what veganism is. Veganism is either exclusive. I always forget how to say this word. Maybe you can help me out. Is it herbivory or is it herbivory? How do you say that word?
Pretty sure it's herbivorous.
Okay, I'll go with herbivory then. Right. Veganism is either exclusive herbivory or it's not even a thing.
Okay, so why? Like, why? Like,
well, because why would it?
I mean, the definition is as practically as possible. So, like, that is like pretty open ended, in my opinion.
Yeah, definitely. That's the vegan society definition. So I also fall under that one too. It's not practical for me to drive to the supermarket this evening to buy some food, but it is very practical for me to not leave my house, stick my rifle out the window, and blow a rabbit's head off, and then eat it.
Is there really that many rabbits there?
Yeah, of course. I've got 2,000 acres of crop to protect, dude. Only 10 of which I own, but I've got permission over 2,000 others.
Right. Okay. So, like, I guess to extend it a little bit more, is to not make it as boring. Let's say that, like, as technology progresses, and I mean, I still don't understand how, like, the whole crop waste thing.
What is it you don't get?
We should just, like, if we don't have as much waste, okay, like, let's say our crop technology improves and we don't have we would have to have twice as much waste as we have, like, and yield. Like that's
Well, the only difference
uh,
is you wouldn't have anything to do with it.
there's over 50% crop loss in the world, like agriculture systems. Like that's a thing.
Yeah, it is a thing, but when you get the degraded crop waste, what are you going to do with it? The only argument you have here is, oh, we give that to animals. Okay, well, we don't have to give it to animals. Like, I mean, take cows, for instance. They're the most common example. Cows will exist just fine on grass. So the amount of crops that we feed to cows is not really what your objection is. It can't
Right.
be.
So if we improve everything, eventually we would still have like more open land. Like that's the goal, is to like free up land.
For what?
But
For what purpose?
well, dude, have you like gone on Google Earth and just like hovered around the planet and just like seen
Dude,
all the little perfect squares cut into like what normally
I
would be
live in the
forest?
UK, right? If you Google Earth the UK, it looks like a giant patchwork quilt.
Yeah, it's the same. It's the
Agricultural
same
land.
over here, except it's circles. So
Yeah, okay, fine. So what would you like to do with that land?
Right. So okay. So that amount of land produces more than twice as much waste as it does yield. So that's like a 33% yield, essentially. So there's 66% waste in all that land. So like let's say we improve technology so well that there's only like 5% waste. So at that point,
Let's say that I prove that smoking more cigarettes cures lung cancer.
okay.
Well,
Well,
you're into
are
pie
you
in the sky, and unless you have an actual
they're
practical
they're
solution.
trying okay, so they're literally growing like vegetables in dense cities where like instead of building a house where it's super sprawled out, they're building more dense areas and using that same land that normally was used for like city shit is now being used to grow vegetables, and people are living off of
Okay,
that instead of having to like purchase
and
stuff from the grocery store.
we're going instead of. How do you think it gets to the grocery store? Where do you think it comes from? We're going to have
Right.
to kill animals in order to keep those crops alive,
No,
which is the argument that I started off with. So as long as I get to kill those animals, I get to eat them. Therefore, you don't have an argument as to why I should go vegan.
no, I'm saying in the future, like if it like when it gets to a point where it's more like there is
Well,
farming that's more
great.
efficient.
Call me back then, dude.
Okay, well that's fine. Like I'm saying, like what would be your answer at that point? Like in that hypothetical.
I already conceded that. I mean, if you want to do this hypothetical thing, which vegans seem fucking obsessed with, cool. Eating steak cures cancer, so now we need to kill more cows.
No, you gotta prove that it cures cancer. You can't
Why?
just say it.
You haven't proved that what you said does anything. You're allowed to do it, but I'm not. There's
No,
not going
because
to be one rule for you and a different thing for me.
we're already on the path of like improving farming. Like there's no reason to say why we can't improve. Like I said, if there's
Yeah,
small
we can
towns.
improve practices. I definitely agree with you. We could improve practices, and there are plenty of objectionable practices that are going on right this minute, which you and I would both disagree on. So what?
Like, what if like the same technology that was used to like grow marijuana, like was like applied to
Well,
growing like
I don't.
vegetables? Like, what if you got like insanely high yields in dense urban environments where there's absolutely no animal deaths? Like, what? Like
Okay, cool.
at that point, that
Call
would
me
be
back.
more.
Call me back when that's the case, because it's
No,
not
that
the case right now.
I'm saying that if I'm relying on that to happen, and I'm doing everything I can to like align myself in that path until it gets there, there's no reason to say why I'm just as ethical as you are.
You're
Like
not, because you're killing more animals, and
I'm
that's the
doing,
metric that you want to use.
but I'm trying to kill as little as possible, and
Me
like again,
too.
like
And
it's still
I'm killing less than you, and I'm not vegan.
Right, but
So you lose.
you can. Well, we're still like in the hypothetical of like
Yeah,
if
and we can
if
go
it
to my
was
hypothetical too.
like what if it was so to happen that like your land experienced damage and whatnot, and you're not able to produce as much, but like the cities are
Yeah,
able to
would
produce as
suck.
more food than possible. And like at the same time, like when you were talking about food waste, there's like nitrogen replenishing ways to like use
Yeah,
food waste to like put
where do
nitrogen
those
back into the soil.
where do those products come from?
No, I'm saying use the food, like use
Yeah,
the
you don't
plant
want to answer
waste
that, do you?
as. I'm saying use the plant waste as the nitrogen replenishment.
It's very ineffective.
Well, right, that's what I'm saying. Maybe what we're doing right now just like doesn't like we can't sustain a population of that many people.
Okay, well, I mean, all right. What do you want me to do? Go out and kill a bunch of people to reduce the population?
No, like instead of just saying veganism is the answer, like argue for
Well,
that
I don't
we still
think
need to
veganism
scale
is the
back on
answer.
this aspect and things like that.
That's fine. That's up to you. You can have whatever preferences you want. I don't mind if you're vegan, dude. It's honestly no effect on my life whatsoever. The question is, which diet or lifestyle, as I prefer to term it, is responsible for the least animal deaths? And it's definitely mine over yours. And you already admitted that you don't have an argument as to why I need to go vegan. So I consider this debate over with.
Yeah, but if I was to live in an area where I got 10 acres and was able to, I mean, shit, I would fucking be able to do a lot with 10 acres.
Mm-hmm.
And I can.
And you'd have to kill animals in order to maintain those crops that you would grow over your 10 acres. And you said
Right.
you don't have an argument as to why we shouldn't eat those animals that we have to kill.
Then what if I just like gave them away to like other animals to eat instead?
You could do that. I mean, is that something you want to rope in to be compatible with veganism?
No, I'm just saying, like, if I was in the same situation as you were in, that's probably what I would do, or at least like.
So you'd kill animals deliberately to protect
Well,
your crops,
I would try.
and you just wouldn't eat them.
I would try not to. Like I said,
Okay.
I would go with the drone
So-
thing, and if it's like
Right.
reasonably less efficient, then I'd take that as a loss.
What we have here then is a situation which is very normal when I get into debates with vegans. You're okay with killing animals, you don't mind killing them. The argument is you can't kill them if the intention is to eat them afterwards.
Well, if you're like
Crickets.
going out of your way to like, like how reasonable is it again, like for you to get calories from something else? Like, are you saying that it's like a life-changing decision for you to acquire?
I have to kill the animals anyway, which is something you already conceded on.
Well,
That's why
I would say I
insisted
would do
this call
everything
be
I could
recorded.
to not to. Like, I would exhaust every other
Okay.
option, and like not being in your case, I wouldn't know
what
how
are you
many
gonna
other
do?
options.
Like, are you gonna send them like email or maybe talk to them a bit? You have to kill them, right? Because there's no other way to get through to them. And if you
Dude,
don't do that,
they
they're gonna eat
grow marijuana in enclosed buildings where there's
They
no
do,
animal
but we're not
deaths.
talking about. Okay, then that makes
We can do
marijuana
that
ethical.
if we can grow that with a fucking plant. We can grow that with another plant. Like just
Okay,
because it's not
when it
possible.
happens, when it's the case, right? I'm perfectly consistent on this because I had a debate with Logan Blake on this, and he brought up the same argument. I said, "Cool. When it happens, hit me back, and I'll concede my argument. Until then, no."
Well, why aren't you trying to like? Why don't you try and develop it? And like,
Well, you want me to build a vertical.
Well, you want me to like all of a sudden acquire something that's pretty much impossible. I mean,
No,
it's kind of the
all I
same
want
thing.
you to do is stop claiming that you're morally superior to me when you've already demonstrated that you're not. That's all I want you to do. I don't care what you eat.
I'm trying to demonstrate when you weigh in the fact that you've acquired like something that I'm never going to be able to acquire. We're essentially
Well, that's
the same.
not my problem. That's not my fault. How is that my fault? I'm not responsible for what you can acquire.
Well, neither am I. So why is it weighed against
Yes,
me?
you are.
Why is it weighed against me?
Because you could do what I did and work fucking hard and buy yourself a parcel of land. That's what I did.
Like, you don't understand. Like, that
No, I
doesn't
do.
exist. There's no land to buy here.
Bullshit. There's some land. Definitely.
So
Wherever
you're,
you live.
so,
You
so
don't
you're,
need to tell me where you live. There's some land that you could buy where you live.
Okay, so you're telling me that from the time that you acquired your land to now,
Bought.
Inflation.
Stop using the word acquired.
Okay, well, it doesn't matter. Okay,
it does.
Okay, so you bought, since we're talking about money, you're saying that from then to now, inflation hasn't exceeded like the cost of like land around the world?
Is it impossible to buy land?
Yeah, essentially, based on those
It's
two categories.
impossible
Yeah.
to buy land. There's no land for sale wherever you live. Give me the don't yourself for fuck's sake. I would never want you to do that. But where roughly do you live?
Very expensive part of like the Rocky Mountains of Colorado.
Colorado. Okay, there's no land that you could buy. It's all taken up. It's all owned by somebody. There isn't even a small parcel of land in Colorado. Is that what you're claiming?
For the amount of money that it would take me to put in, I would have to work way harder than you have.
Well,
so you're telling me that I should work harder than you?
Yeah, go ahead, do it. If that's what you have to do, if you want to make a moral argument, do that. If you care so much to come into a debate, go do it. Otherwise, you're just going to end up at the position where, well, actually, I don't give that much of a shit after all.
No, I can say that I work just as hard as you have, but I'm at a lower point because there's just not that many resources to get.
What did you spend your money on then?
to survive, literally rent.
To survive. No, you didn't spend
student loans. I mean, to be real,
that's
I am
your
from
problem,
America.
dude. I can't do anything about that, right? That's your problem. That's called YP. It's your problem.
Right. I mean, again, you're asking just for someone to be
I'm not
morally the
you
same
to
as
do
you to work twice as hard as you. That's just a silly argument.
It's very, very Yeah, it is a silly argument because it's quite doubtful that you would work twice as hard as me if you ever even tried to. But you should, if you care so much about this topic, that is what you would do. And I have done it, right? Talking about unfortunate circumstances and turns of fate and whatever, that's not my problem. I can't control that. The fact remains that I am responsible for less animal deaths than you are, and I'm not vegan. And you've conceded that 3 times already, and somehow we're still going.
Well, you would disagree with the fact that saying that you're in line with veganism, but at a certain point you would defer, maybe, or maybe not, but I don't know.
Well, we agreed on the word herbivory, right? That's my definition. I don't care about your vegan society definition because all that does is leave the door open for you to play any card you like, which is not something I'm going to allow.
No, it's left the door open to accommodate for people's access and lifestyle. Okay, you say you worked your ass off to get to this point.
Yeah.
In my political views, there has to be a system to accommodate
derail into politics.
No, I'm just saying there's people who can't work that, who are never going to be able to put in that kind of work just because they're not smart or they're not physically capable, or generally just whatever.
That's fine. I don't have an issue with that. But those people need to not tell me that I'm morally inferior to them. If they stop doing that, I will be quiet. Are we still connected?
Yeah.
Oh,
No,
okay.
I'm just
No, it's fine. You think, but that's what I'm saying. I don't care what anybody's position is. It's when you come and tell me that I'm morally inferior because I'm not vegan. That's when I pipe up. And probably not any other time.
I just feel like that's a weird implication of like, yeah, you could draw that out essentially, and like, you know, obviously like ask yourself, like that's essentially the conclusion that he draws out.
Oh, fuck that idiot. Who cares about him? Do you
Well,
like
I
that
mean,
guy?
he-
Just as a little, like, short tangent, maybe 10 seconds, are you a fan of that guy?
I mean, I wouldn't say I was ever a fan. Like I used to watch his stuff. Like he just generally doesn't talk about anything interesting or he doesn't bring up anything interesting in my opinion.
Fair enough.
And yeah, his hypotheticals are just a little too much for me.
Yeah, I agree. Which is why I went to ridiculous hypotheticals myself, right?
Well, sometimes it's not so ridiculous. I mean, in my opinion, I think that sometimes you can, you know, I mean, I'd say the times we're living in right now are pretty ridiculous.
Well, yeah, but that's not hypothetical. That's reality.
Well, right, but if the times we're living in right now are ridiculous, what's to say that a hypothetical is not ridiculous based on someone saying it is?
Well, if you want to invoke something in a hypothetical, it should at least be possible, potentially. Otherwise, you leave the door open to me to do the exact same thing to you. Do you want an example?
I mean, yeah, go for it.
Okay, so in my hypothetical, cows, which we have bred into existence, right? You know cows, obviously. They enjoy being stabbed in the face and turned into hamburgers. And if we didn't do it to them, they would be really, really sad and upset their whole lives. And as an added bonus, when we stab them in the face, they smile. And we get to live a lot longer because we've eaten their meat. So now I've won the debate, right?
Yeah, I mean,
Mhm.
right. I guess.
There you go. That's how come it's ridiculous. And with that, I am going to shut up because I consider this debate well and truly over with, and I want to open the floor up to other people who may
Jesus
or may
fucking
not.
Christ, SD.
Right, who wants to go first? I mean, actually, it would be more fair to give occasionally consistent a closing statement. Do you want to close off? Because I've got nothing more to say.
If people have questions, I'd rather let them ask them first.
Sure. Okay, so anybody fire away who wants to go for it.
So SD, I'd want to contest your point to show that the average meat eater causes less. Let's even keep with that.
It's not a claim I made. I
You
didn't
never
say
claimed that
anything
the
about
average
your
meat eater-
average meat eater.
Was that not something you guys talked about?
I never made any claims about your average meat eater. I made claims about myself.
Isn't that why you guys were talking about most livestock?
Yeah,
edible crop?
you said that because I buy grains that are grown for
Yeah.
human consumption, that I'm contributing
That
to
you
more
are
deaths.
responsible for more deaths, yes, and I
You're saying that
stand
all
up.
the grains grown around the world are meant for humans. It's just the waste is meant for animals instead.
Yes. Well, I made that claim with respect to the UK where I live. I mean, I said it's in writing. I couldn't speak to where you live.
Well, I said specifically in like where I live, like that's completely not the case. Like almost all the
How
grain
do you
that's
know?
grown.
You
It's just a
almost
fact.
all the grain that's grown is grown to be fed to cattle. Really?
To livestock and just in general, like all
Provide a source
livestock.
then. Provide a
Okay.
source.
Okay.
Because
I'll dig it up.
that's gonna turn out to
Morning.
be bullshit.
So worldwide, I think it's about, from studies I've read, about 30% of grains, edible grains, goes to livestock.
Yeah, maximum, I would say.
Not maximum, that's estimate.
Well, I would put it at maximum as somebody who's involved in the industry, but you can look something up if you want.
Sorry, so that was a worldwide number. Maybe you're aware of your local situation, but maybe you're,
which is the UK.
yeah, maybe you're also aware worldwide, but you'd have to say that until I would know it.
Okay,
But,
well, I've asked for a source, and no source has come forth yet. So
okay, that's fine. I didn't make that claim, so I'm not going to provide a source for it.
that's fine. I would ask you, do you mind excusing me for just a second, because I really need to take a piss.
Nope. You have to stay
take
on.
a piss, SD.
No, I'm gonna take a piss, right? So
Alright,
I'll be back in just a couple of minutes.
So how's it going, guys?
Good.
So occasionally, can I ask you a question?
Yes.
While you were in the debate with SD, you brought up the fact that he was saying that there are more animals on the planet than humans, but I was curious on where you got that.
I mean, like my comparison was that there's like 25 million pigs in just one state, and like there's not that many states that have 25 million people living in them, especially the rural ones where all the piggeries are.
You can look it up online. We slaughter somewhere, I forget the number, but somewhere between 50 and 80 billion land animals a year.
Yeah, they said like at the rate that we kill animals, like excluding fish, like chickens, pigs, cattle, whatever, the human population will go extinct in like less than a month or something like that. Like you can just Google that and just tell me what the first couple of results are.
Yeah, they'll range, but they're always about 50 billion.
So you were also saying that we shouldn't kill animals if we're going to eat them. So then, what would be the point in killing an animal?
No, we shouldn't create animals into existence to eat them, is the argument. Like if you want to kill like, if you want to kill all those mice that got shredded up in the combine harvester or whatever, like if you want to eat them instead of just like being left there to like rot and stuff, like go for it. Like that's essentially like what I said of his argument is I boiled down to just roadkill, and I don't know how many vegans would object, like how many actual vegans would object to like eating roadkill. It's just like it's weird. You're obviously not really vegan because you don't care about the animals, but I mean that's just like
I would disagree
nitpicking.
about not caring about animals, but what about hunting?
Well, right. So like I would say like all that energy that you put into hunting, like could you just put that into like acquiring like.
But you do know
plant
that
food?
there are some states where animals don't have any natural predators other than humans, right?
That's because of the fact that most areas have been completely deforested and all the predators have been killed because
I would disagree because
they attack livestock.
Indiana isn't deforested at all. But the main predator that they have there is humans and possibly coyotes.
If you drive through 90% of Indiana, what are you driving through?
You're driving through plains, but that's not meaning that they're deforested, because I know of several places where I've gone hunting and there's plenty of woods, there's plenty of forest, and there's
so like
not enough.
what kind of lands, like how are those lands zoned? Like is that BLM land, national forest? Like what is that?
It's just private property that's owned by certain people that are hundreds of acres long.
Okay, so it's private property, so it's not national. It's not like public forests where like animals can roam like freely.
No, they can still roam freely.
So one issue with a lot of private property, I mean, of course it depends on the area, is that they tend to not be contiguous. I mean, obviously it'll depend on the area, but when you don't have contiguous forest area large enough for predators, it creates an issue for them.
But my whole point is, if we didn't hunt deer in Indiana, then they would overpopulate and would end up moving on and eating more resources that they can't regrow in time, and then the population will eventually starve out. So why not take a couple of deer a year to prevent overpopulation, is my point. What's wrong with that?
Okay, so I just came back, so I hear Quentin asking a question there. So, who was that directed at?
That was directed to,
Occasionally consistent, I assume.
yes. Or if anybody wants to answer that question, then anybody can
I mean,
answer.
I can answer, but I assume my answer is different. So since he's answering
Oh,
all
you
that,
can go ahead.
Yeah, anybody can talk. That's cool.
So my answer would
Yeah,
be just an answer of pragmatism. Like, if it actually turns out that there's no better solution, which I think oftentimes, not necessarily all, like oftentimes there may be a better solution, but if it turns out that there is no better solution, then I have no problem with it.
But what do you think is a better solution than hunting to prevent
So could
overpopulation?
you do things like introduce predators? Could you do other things of that nature? What else could you do? I'm not going to say I'm an expert to know all the other options, but which is why I'm telling you that, like, I'm not giving you saying do this, do that. I'm just telling you this is how I would approach the issue. Try to figure out better issues, and if there's not, then I'll be okay with it.
I mean, but there aren't really that many predators that you can introduce into the Indiana state that would keep
Right.
up
I mean,
with
like I said, I'm not going to argue the
deer.
specifics. I'm not an expert. I told you my
I was,
methodology, and
I was
then
just,
you
I
have to
was
do
just
research.
explaining. You know, I wasn't trying to argue with you. I was just explaining that there are certain circumstances to where there aren't really predators that could live in that environment.
I think it would take a bit more effort to be sure of that, since in most cases there was balance before humans introduced change into the environment. So you'd expect that, in theory, there could be balance, oftentimes reintroduced, not always. You'd have to consider how that would work, if at all. Right? Because before humans were, let's say, involved in that ecosystem, it was a balanced ecosystem, right? It's just going to happen naturally. You know, what could have screwed it up is like you killed the predators or you introduced like another animal that didn't exist in the ecosystem and it fucked everything up. Like, so clearly things can get fucked up to the point that it's not simple to fix. But, you know, in theory, in a lot of situations, it should be possible.
Quentin, you're on mute right now. I don't know if you
Yeah,
know.
sorry about that.
That's right.
But I mean, the thing is though that like, what kind of predators besides coyotes could we introduce? Because I know that wolves wouldn't really be able to sustain a population in Indiana. Because you know, as soon as they got to a certain size, they would start invading farms and picking off livestock, and then they would just start hunting wolf again.
Right, but again, like the majority of land isn't livestock, it's crops. Everywhere you drive around, like, you know, Midwest United States, it's just nothing but grains. There's no trees.
Mm-hmm. And that's sorry, I'm supposed to be being quiet.
No,
Again, I mean, like that hinges. Go
I
ahead.
think in some cases you would have to kill animals, just like how ST was describing it, right? Like, just as he is doing it for the sake of protecting his, sure, that would also occur in other
Protecting yours too.
areas. You're still muted if you are meaning to talk.
Oh, sorry, I'm trying to use the restroom. Give me 1 minute.
You take a piss, man. No worries.
Okay. In the meantime, so Essie, regarding like what claim were you trying to make regarding the inedibility of crops?
I made the claim that the spoil is all that it's fed to, for instance, cattle. And even if you want to object to that, which I know you can't, but if you want to try, cattle will subsist without that. So that's obviously not what the objection is.
So are you making that claim localized or globally?
I'm making it with regards to the UK, yeah.
Okay, so you're saying within the UK, a large portion of the crops fed to cattle are inedible by humans. That's the
Yeah.
claim?
That's the only thing that would ever be fed to cattle.
Okay.
Why would it be fed to cattle if it could be sold to humans?
And then you're drawing the conclusion from that in the UK, it causes, because of that, less death to eat cattle?
No,
Okay.
no,
What were you
I
drawing?
never made that claim. That's nothing even slightly
Okay.
close to
No,
anything
I'm
I said.
asking. So what conclusion were you drawing from that? Because, I mean, you had a point. You didn't just say it for nothing.
Well, the objection that comes up time and time again, as I've already stated, is that the crops that we grow, if we didn't have any cattle, then we could grow much less crops, right? Well, no, you couldn't, because you're going to have to grow the exact same amount of crops, because all that gets fed to cattle is the crap that humans won't buy or eat.
So yeah, I
So
disagree.
we can click our fingers and get rid of all cattle. We can do that right now and grow the exact same amount of crops for human consumption. You're still going to have the exact same amount of spoil, which is what we call it, only you're not going to have anything to do with it.
See, I disagree with that last statement. So first off, I'll agree that there is some amount of spoil that is inevitable, right? If you go to absolutely zero cattle, then you're gonna have some amount of leftover. But what you said there, that you're gonna have the exact same, I think
Well,
means
you could take that out of the equation, because cattle aren't required to be fed any type of grain whatsoever. They eat grass.
Okay, hold on.
Sure.
Can I just,
So
can I
it
just
makes
jump
no
in real quick?
difference. It's a complete moot point.
Can I just jump in real quick?
Yeah.
So I'm reading from the paper. The Western Hemisphere would spare significant amounts of land on their USDA diet, largely due to a current very high levels of meat consumption via grown to feed livestock.
Okay, well, post it, because it's not really going to matter. I mean, you're welcome to post it, and I will definitely take a look at it. But
Yeah, where do I post it?
it wouldn't make any difference, because cows eat grass, right? So we can stop feeding them corn and grain and all the rest of it. I mean, in the UK, corn is used as a collective term for like barley, wheat, oats, that kind of thing.
Yeah, just grain.
Yeah, grain. Yeah, exactly. We can stop feeding them that, and not one cow is going to die because they didn't get fed that. So you're going to have the exact same number of cows. So it doesn't matter.
Well, that will go against what the article says, so that's the issue. Where do I post it?
Well, it wouldn't. I mean, cows eat grass.
No, the argument is that they eat the grains.
Well, yes, but you could not feed them the grains, and none of them are going to die because they didn't get fed grain.
Well, where would they get their food from?
Grass, dude. You know, the green stuff?
Right, but there's not as much.
That's
grass
what
doesn't
cows
have
eat.
as much. Overeating makes you fat.
Enough
So
grass for the same.
there's not enough grass. There's just not enough
yes,
grass.
There is in the UK.
So that would say that the article is completely wrong. So I mean, you have to read it first.
If that's what the article claims, then I will say it's completely wrong. Sure.
You have to cite the parts that are wrong. You can't just say it's wrong.
Okay, well, obviously, I can't read the article while we're in the conversation right now.
No, that's fair.
An unreasonable request.
Yeah, no, that's fair.
Do you submit that if we don't feed cows grain, that they will all drop dead?
there
That's
won't be
not
enough grass to sustain as many cows. That's what's going to
Except
happen.
that's incorrect, because most cows in the UK are grass-fed.
Right, but
that doesn't
most
substantiate
cows,
your point.
you guys don't feed, like, the entire vegan or the entire UK population doesn't just eat cows. Like, they would all starve if all they had to eat was just the cows, right?
Well, I don't know about that. That's a nutrition argument, which is something I don't do. I'm talking about keeping cows alive and letting them do what they normally do.
Well,
we don't need to feed cows grain; they can just eat grass. And
right.
you can look on my YouTube channel. I have a video. You're going to dismiss this as anecdotal, I'm sure, but there's a photo of me leaning out my bedroom window filming cows eating grass, and that's what they do.
Right, but how many cows do you have? Or how
I
many
don't
cows?
have any cows.
Right, how many
I don't
cows?
have-
Like, how would you say, like 100, like 50, 10?
What,
Like, roughly.
I don't have any cows.
No, like whatever those cows are out your window, like whoever those cows are.
In that one field, I would estimate 50.
And how big is that field?
That field is 13 acres.
Is it just for the cows?
Yeah, because you can't do anything else with it.
Right,
It's not suitable for arable. So.
Yeah, because they just poop and eat grass, yeah.
Yeah. So that doesn't get rid of cows then, does it?
Okay, so those 13 cows, if we were to say that's 13 acres for 50 cows or whatever, like, I think the last thing I read was like one cow was like 460,000 calories or something, or like 400,000 calories. Like, let's just say that, like, what would you say one cow feeds? Like, how many people, or like?
Well, I mean, I've read something that if you have an entire dead cow and you're able to freeze it and all that, then it will last you a year. I mean, I don't know. I'm not Sverige and I'm not Frank Tufano. I don't do the like calorie count thing.
Well, right, but the argument comes down to, if we're going to use this land for something, what is the best thing that we could possibly use it for? Would it be best to convert all that grass into more apple trees and potato fields?
No. You can't do it. Well, unless you want
I want to
massive
see some
expense.
data for that. That's a scientific question, so I want to see data for that. That's what I'm saying.
It's not a scientific question. It's a very hypothetical question. The land that cows feed on mostly over here. I can't speak to where you are because I don't know the landscape. But over here, cows are mostly fed on grass, which grows every fucking where. And the field that I'm talking about specifically right now, which I appreciate, is just one isolated example. I'm not trying to claim it's anything more than that. You could not plow that field and plant crops in it.
If I may interject, occasionally consistent. I'm curious as to you. So I've seen a lot of data regarding worldwide statistics regarding these things, like how much land is available in various places.
I'm sure you have.
Sure. And I've looked at a lot of statistics, and they also on the feed available, whether they're inedible or not, and what types of feed occur. And they are not consistent with what you're saying locally, which, I mean, is completely plausible. So do you have any evidence?
That's fine. I mean, I don't normally do this. I hate to pull rank and say, well, I've actually been there and done it, but in this case, I have actually been there and done it, as opposed to something you read on the internet.
No, and again, the information I've read is not conflicting, right? Because I've looked at global numbers, and you're making claims about local situations.
Well,
so,
yeah.
So basically, so do you have any sources for the local information, like the local land use numbers, the local feed numbers, and so on?
I don't have that for you, no. So now you can just dismiss everything I've said before this out of hand, right?
Well, you're arguing for reality, and if reality is opposite, then technically what you're doing, like, you should be doing the opposite.
I tell you what I will do. I don't know how much more honest I can be about this, because if either of you guys want to come over to my house and spend a week working with me and have a look at it for yourself, then you're gonna understand. But what we get with vegans time and time again is, I found this resource on the internet. It's like, I don't care. I don't care what you found on the internet, because that's not going to be compatible with the reality where I
Okay,
live.
right. So my
But
question
here's the
is,
thing.
I will
What-
put you up. I will give you accommodation. If you want to come over and see how it's done, I promise you, I'm being sincere. You can do that.
no,
I
like
believe
there's
you.
nothing wrong with that. Yeah, but like, hold on, Ping. Sorry, I just want to keep this going for a little bit
Go
more.
ahead.
Why specifically is that 13 acres not able to sustain any kind of plants or anything else, whereas your 10 acres can grow all these plants that all you have to do is
Because
kill?
my 10 acres is cultivated, and I did that by hand. If you expect me to do 13 acres and then the other 2,000 that I have permission over, you are not working in reality right now.
Well, I mean, if you haven't realized, like, fucking Dubai has like goddamn
Not my
green
problem.
ass lawns in the middle of fucking nowhere. I mean, it's possible. Like we're talking about today.
Yeah.
Like this isn't no
Okay. So,
hypothetical.
all right. So you want to talk about what's possible? Why aren't you doing everything that's possible to kill as few animals as you can?
I am.
No, you're not.
Yeah, I am.
Oh, really? You already admitted that you're not.
Wait,
So
so
now
when you
you're
say
going back on it.
when you manage this, no, I'm saying me trying to kill as little as possible might still result in more numerical deaths than you. I'm not like,
Okay.
there's nothing wrong with that.
Well, I would agree.
Right, so like this land, so you're like managing it or whatever. You
Mhm.
have like, if it was to be converted, I mean, you're saying that all it
Well,
has to
what
do
do
is
you want to
irrigate it.
do?
I mean,
No.
your
When
land
did
is
I
irrigated.
mention irrigation? Where the fuck did you get that from? I haven't mentioned irrigation once in this conversation.
Okay, well, you have to develop the land to be able to grow plants, right?
Yeah, and do you know what that involves?
Well, I'm asking.
Okay, so the first thing you would have to do is get, I would say, 5 32-ton excavators in and level the land off, because otherwise it's not practical to grow crops on it. You would then have to plow it and remove all the rubble from it. Then it needs to be cultivated. You need to put in something which is called offset discs, which I know you don't know what they are. Then you need to till it on top. Then you need to drill it with seeds. Then you need to fertilize it. Then you need to spray it. And then you need to make sure that it doesn't die by the animals that would otherwise eat it can't eat it before you want to eat it. And that process is astronomically expensive. Are you gonna come
And that's
over and buy
well,
me a fucking £80,000 tractor to do that with?
okay. So I'm assuming that it's just it takes more work than your land. Like your land was just much easier to prepare for. Like you didn't have to do as much, right? And that's
I
why this
did it
land was left for
all by
animals.
hand, but it's because it's land that I own. I'm incentivized to look after it.
Well, right, but I'm asking like if you were given this 13 acres just for free and you didn't have to at least even buy it, and all of a sudden that would make all that endeavor not like as big of a deal. And then
I would still.
if that was still to yield more calories per person,
I'm not
that was
interested in
original.
calories per person.
Well, the point is to feed everyone, right?
No, that's not the debate that we were having. And you keep trying to move the goalposts. You've done it 5 times already. The metric
What's that?
was who kills the least animals for their diet. I proved that I kill the least. You conceded. It's recorded, so we can play it back. And now you want to move it to something else.
No, I'm just talking. Like that's the ultimate thing is like to cause as little animal death as possible. Like,
and I'm
don't
doing
really
that, and I'm
care.
doing a
Right.
better job of it than you are, and I'm not
Well,
vegan.
Right, but I'm saying that under
So,
current
right.
technology, we can make better results with still
Yeah,
cost.
and under the technology that I'm going to invent, I've cured cancer.
That's just not really like the same hypothetical, like along the
Why?
same
What?
lines.
You get to make shit up, but I don't.
Well, no, they should be along the same lines if they should be comparable.
Well, what's the disconnect then? You're coming up with a solution to a problem that you think exists, which
No,
isn't
I'm
at
saying there
all a
is
practical
a
solution.
solution. We can develop
What? Go
plans
vegan.
to-
Except we've already established that go vegan isn't the solution. You've admitted that 5 times.
The solution is to eat plants, and that results in
It's
causing as
not,
little
though.
animal deaths as possible.
It's not. You're gonna right. I'm probably gonna stop the recording in a minute because you've admitted 5 times already that that's not the solution.
What do you mean? Like, what did I? Just because that you can eat
You have
just
admitted that
because eating the bycatch means that that's not the case.
that's what you said. Yeah. You've already admitted that I'm not vegan. You already know I'm not vegan, and I'm responsible for less animal deaths than you are. So therefore, I am morally superior to you by the way this is measured.
regarding diet.
Sure, regarding diet. I prefer to say lifestyle, but whatever, one and the same. So we're going round and round in circles.
Right, but I mean, there's the whole thing of like not weighing in, like individual circumstances, like
Well, who are you
all
going to
this
talk to?
technology, like if you didn't have access to advanced technology, like do you think that you would take like a significant hit on like your production and things like that?
No, I don't have access to
You're
advanced technology. What
you're a
what
pretty legit
technology are you
farmer.
talking about?
Well, like farmers here have like, they even the organic pesticides are like pretty fancy. Like that stuff is like made in labs and things like that.
No, I just do it myself, dude. And
I'm just saying,
if you
like,
think I'm joking, if you think I'm making it up just for the sake of debate, I've posted this all over the place. I posted pictures of the crops that I grow.
right, but again, like that's an anecdotal claim. That's not
Okay,
valid.
and that's exactly what I
the
said
most
you
people.
would do. That is
Right.
exactly what I said you'd do. You're going to
Yeah,
blow
you
it off
did.
anecdote and then pretend that, oh no, it doesn't matter then.
Well, I'm interested in what's going to help everybody.
Well, I'm not.
Okay, well, I mean, we're obviously different there. I mean, like, it's kind of ironic.
The
That, like, I would
debate
say that,
tonight
like,
was between you and me, and you lost that debate. And that's not me like being a dick and claiming, oh, I won and I'm so great. But you did lose this debate by every metric possible. So if you want to do it again, if you want to reschedule with maybe round 2 or something like that, I'd be more than happy to do that with you. I'm not being some big-headed fucking idiot like Ask Yourself. But you have to concede that you've lost this debate. Well, you already have conceded, so it doesn't matter whether you say it again.
I've conceded because if you don't weigh in for like our differences in like situation, that's
Yeah.
what you're saying that like that's not good enough. Like you shouldn't wait.
Well,
Like you shouldn't try and weigh the results. Like that's what you're saying.
well, when you and I are discussing which of our lifestyles is the word that I like to use, when we're discussing which of our lifestyles is more ethical, and we discuss which metric we're going to judge that by, and then you admit that my lifestyle is more ethical than yours by that metric, I have no choice but to claim that I've won the debate. It's pretty obvious.
I mean, all right. That's just like a weird way to look at it. Like,
Well, how would you like to look at it?
Painting it like so like drastically.
I don't see what's drastic about it. We agreed on a metric, we agreed on a proposition, and you agreed that you lost. I don't see why that's drastic.
No, I said I agree that I would lose if you don't weigh it, but sometimes you have to weigh results on different things. Like that's a legitimate
then
scientific method.
You will need to discuss those other metrics with people who support those other metrics. When you're discussing with me, this is how it goes. I don't say you're not going to be able to defeat my position by arguing against positions that I don't hold, right? That's pretty much obvious.
I don't know. I didn't really understand that last part.
You didn't understand what I said. Did I break up? Or?
No, I just didn't get it.
Okay. So when you argue against a position that I do not hold, you're not defeating my position.
Right.
You're arguing against somebody else who is not debating you right now. How else are you going to judge who wins a debate? Right? What are you going to do? You're going to look at the debate and go, well, I prefer this guy's position. It doesn't matter what he says because I go with like the argument that I won against some other guy. That's not how it works.
No, I don't. Okay, so I don't understand where I am making that type of claim. Like, what am I saying specifically to like compare to that?
Well, you keep coming back with more and more arguments after I've already said that I'm done with this debate. So I've offered you an opportunity. If you want to do it again, maybe a round 2, we can do that.
Well, I mean, it's just
this
kind of
one,
weird.
You haven't prevailed. Because you're debating me, right? Who else are you debating?
Right. I don't understand where I'm not arguing against anybody, like trying to debate a position that you're not holding or something like that.
Well, you have tried several times, but we'll let that go. Do you want to do round 2 maybe next weekend or something? Because I'd be happy to. You've been a really good interlocutor. No problems with the way you've like conducted yourself or anything like that.
Oh yeah, no, thank you. I mean, I'd definitely be happy to do it later. I don't like to make plans right away. But I'll let you know.
Okay.
Sorry, Ping, I cut you off.
Yeah, go ahead, Ping. I'm done too. I'll probably just listen for the rest of the VC here, but you can go ahead.
Oh, I was going to ask you a question, but yeah.
Well, go on. And I mean, I'm still here. If it's me, your question too, then go for it.
Yeah. So I mean, I still wanted to explore the inedible livestock feed a little bit more regarding the UK, and so I'm not going to say like, okay, anything that you bring up is not worthwhile unless you have a study. I think that's one level of evidence. There can be other levels of evidence, but that being said,
sure.
Is all you have regarding your knowledge of these issues like your experience on your farm and so on? Like,
I
you don't have any global
have a farm. How many
land?
say it? I don't know.
Your experience in like your very localized like land and what you see around you.
Yeah, I know how it's done in the country where I live.
Right. So that's what I'm saying. Like, how do you know that?
Because I've been there and done it.
Come across? Sorry,
I've been there and done it, dude. I've worked on farms. Most of my friends are farmers. I'm in very close connections with farms. I'm on the daily on farms for one reason or another, even if it's just to help out a friend, right? So I know how farming works in the UK.
Right. So are you saying like more than in just one specific part of the UK? Just trying to gauge your scope of understanding of the UK. Like, how much have you come across among the whole swath of the UK?
Well, I've worked in farms from Cumbria to Essex, so that's pretty much the length and breadth of the UK. So I think I'm in a reasonably good position to explain how things are done here, having actually done it, as opposed to just Googling stuff.
Okay.
Have you? You ever worked on farms? Ever been to a farm?
I think that looking at studies is a higher
Would
level.
you like to answer the question?
Sure. No, I haven't. I have been to farms. I have not worked in the sense of like beyond a day or a couple of days been there.
Right, fair enough. Thank you for actually answering the question. I appreciate it.
Yeah, but the next thing I was going to get to is my opinion on that matter, if it's of importance, which is that I think that studies provide a level of understanding that's better than can be understood.
So as long as something is written down on paper, that undermines the reality of it, according to you.
No, of course not. But the intentional, it's not just writing it down, obviously, right? It's intentionally going and looking at all of the data and looking at all of the farms that exist in the country versus just the ones that you come across.
You think that's been done?
Attempted to, right? Obviously, you're not going to go to every literal farm, but obviously there are ways of doing these studies. Like you don't look at every single person on earth to come to health conclusions, right? You run a randomized controlled trial.
Mm-hmm.
Right? So obviously, if you can't exactly do randomized controlled trials.
How do you react then when one of these studies comes into conflict with the reality of the situation? You wouldn't know, would you?
So here's the thing. Does the studies always 100% reflect what is true? No, that's not a guarantee by any means. The point, obviously, the intention is that, from my end, is that it is the most accurate source of information
available to you.
Sure, and I think
because you don't have direct access to that information. You don't have direct experience.
I would argue that should there be similar studies, and there could be, I just haven't read them or come across them, regarding the UK, I would argue that those are a higher level of evidence than your experience, from what you've told me is your experience.
Okay, well, I mean, you can declare that, but when you're in that situation, I will take you very until you're in that situation, we've actually been there and done it. Sorry, but I dismiss your claim out of hand.
Okay, we disagree.
And I have good reason, right?
Your claim. So, I mean, we disagree.
Let me tell you a very, very, I promise this won't take long. So there was a vegan in this server towards the beginning of it, and his main argument was that it had been scientifically proven, like via peer review, that vegetables were the most thermodynamically optimal crops that humans could grow and consume for our existence, right? And he sent me that paper, and I had a look at it, and I thought, yeah, this stacks up. This seems to say exactly what he claimed it said. However, there are practical problems with doing that, which undermine whatever that paper found, right? So I just granted him it. I said, yep, okay, I accept your paper. That's fine. It concludes where it concludes, and I'll give you it. However, it can't actually be done. What do you care more about? Do you care about what can actually be done, or do you care about what a scientific paper says?
I mean, all you said is that the conclusions that may have been
no, it concluded with vegetables being the most thermodynamically optimal things that humans can grow and eat in order to sustain ourselves.
Okay, fine. So presumably,
I'm accepting that.
We're using that conclusion to make claims that you two may have disagreed.
Go vegan, right?
Right, exactly. So that may be in the claim he was coming from there, or the conclusion he was coming to. And that would just be a poor argument, right? You're using evidence that does not imply your conclusion.
Well, it does
Okay, so you
imply a
made a mistake
conclusion.
So be it. Like that's the mistake you made. Like just don't have bad arguments. Like,
Yeah.
what do you want me to say?
Well, sure. I mean, I'm just running this past you as an example of why scientific papers on this particular topic can be a little bit problematic.
No, all it
Because
needs is make conclusions that are derivable from the evidence you have. I mean, that's all you've told me, and I agree.
yeah, and I agreed too, because that paper supported his conclusion.
So yeah, I don't really know what point you hope to make there.
My point is that even though I accept the conclusion of that paper, there are pragmatic problems which stand in the way of that actually being done.
Right. So what would those be?
No, I mean,
Irrigation.
That's not
mostly.
even relevant.
It is relevant.
I mean, I can grant you that to be true. That's not going to change the discussion in any way.
You know, you could provide me with a paper, peer-reviewed study that says that, I don't know, if I can pick something, turnips are the most thermodynamically optimal thing that people can grow and eat. I'll accept it. If you can provide it, I'll just accept it. Cool, great, fine. The paper says that, understood. However, in practical terms, you're not actually going to be able to do that. So I question the worth of that paper under those circumstances. If it can't actually be done, then you might as well throw that paper in the bin.
Okay, we agree. I
just
just don't think
turnips,
that's relevant to anything that I've been saying.
Oh, sorry, it wasn't intended to be an attack on anything you said. I just thought I'd put that forward because it's something that sprang into my memory.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people make poor arguments. A lot of people have poor evidence, and there's not much that can be said other than don't do that and like try and improve on it.
I guess.
Well, if the evidence says you can do something, or if you do it this way, it's going to be better. So you should do it. Implying that you should. Obviously at that point, you have some kind of obligation eventually.
Do you?
Because so like obviously, like a small hypothetical of like a vegan like changing their lifestyle and going on the path that you're in, having apple trees and whatnot and vegetables. And let's say that they just happen to not have as many predator issues, like they don't have pigeons attack their crops, or like they're able to use some kind of technology where they can grow their plants.
We're off in La La Land, but go on.
Well, that's totally reasonable. It happens here.
It's not reasonable.
How is it not reasonable?
What, they don't have any... What technology are you using that I can utilize to stop that from happening so I don't have to shoot them?
Greenhouses.
Greenhouses?
That's already how lots of vegetables are grown around the world.
Right, so I'm expected to pay for and erect a 13-acre greenhouse?
Well, if you get better yields within a greenhouse, you wouldn't need as much land.
You are absolutely deluded. I'm sorry, I don't mean to be insulting, but this is completely ridiculous.
That's totally existing farming technology. I don't know how I'm being deluded. Like, what's the issue with that?
I'm not a farmer. I'm a householder. I'm not a farmer. What am I supposed to do? Spend are you going to send me the money to do it? If you will, then I'll do it. I'll post videos of it.
I mean, I would argue that taxes would like give you like the tools and education if you wanted to.
Okay. Right. Okay. Stop. I'm just gonna let anybody else want to speak because I'm well and truly fucking done with this.
What's the speech? What's the talk about?
Terry, how are you, man? Go
good.
ahead. Just ask any questions that you want because this debate is well.
What's the debate about?
13-acre greenhouses that we have to pay for ourselves. It's all very reasonable.
I wouldn't know what that's about.
It's okay. I'm just going to be quiet, and I won't say another word unless I need to right? Because I am now being quite.
Vegans suck.
Carnage suck.
This debate's going really well.
Innit?
And no one has anything to talk about unless they're disagreeing with you, SD. So here's one other question I suppose I have about the earlier debates. Do both of you really think that death is the only metric of relevance?
What does that mean in English?
They were arguing what practices result in less death as far as diets go.
Right.
And, that was a metric of what was the better choice. So my question is that really all that they think is morally relevant in those situations? Just the death of the animal, nothing else. Like the obvious implication being suffering, maybe of importance.
I mean, I would say that at that point, like veganism is like two arguments, like the objective argument and like obviously if you're if you believe in subjective morality, it's two different arguments. You have to argue with like the most objective thing that you can quantify, and then like what would be the other things that we can consider besides death?
Suffering.
Right. So that's like we can't really. I mean, yeah, we can quantify body language and things like that, but I guess that makes sense. Like we
The
can
fact that
quantify
you
suffering,
don't
but
know it
that's-
doesn't mean it's not worth valuing.
Right. That
That
would
you
be the
don't know
argument.
which
Yeah.
decision. But anyway, were you suggesting morality is objective a second ago? Did I hear that wrong?
I wouldn't like definitively say it, but I would say like that our like goal as an intelligent species should be like to try and quantify morality as best that we can, which means that it should be objective in some fashion.
I mean, we could discuss that. I disagree, but I'm not sure if you have a position you want to defend there.
Always interested in hearing everybody's opinions and thoughts.
It would be more so me questioning yours, because I would just say I've yet to hear a good argument for objective morality. So thus I would just be attacking yours.
Well, right, but that's what I'm saying is like we need to like in the efforts of like would you say a plus sign is objective or subjective?
I don't know what you mean. Like, what is a plus sign?
Like addition exists. Like you can obviously use addition to get to things. Like you can use addition to get electrons to flow through like a circuit. Like that's it. Like
Yeah,
but does
addition
the plus sign really exist without us being there? It's a weird question.
I mean, I don't know what that means. A plus sign is like just a concept, right? So.
Well, right, but it has real implications.
Sure. I mean,
Like
it's
you
like
can
saying
like
there's
you
no
can
word.
like you can see it.
I mean, we've conceptually decided how to picture it. Sure.
Like if there's no like doesn't perspective philosophy say that like if there's not a sentient thing to observe suffering, then like is there really suffering there?
You mean as if there's not a sentient being to experience suffering or to observe?
Well, I mean, I guess the experience.
Yeah, if there's no sentient beings, then sure, there's no suffering.
But I don't know. Like, there's no suffering. That's what you said.
If there's no sentient beings, yeah.
But then, I mean, I guess that would mean that like all like the life that all animals go through is suffering because like if they're just it's supposed to be that way.
What? I have no idea what that means.
Well, like, so you're saying that an animal that's like that just lost its mother because like a deer just got run over by a car and it's like this little fawn is like now all by itself, like that I would say that's suffering, even though like that's still a subjective thing, but at the same time without me being there, like that's still the situation for that animal.
Yeah, I mean that animal is sentient. That's why it suffers.
Right, but just because I guess just because someone isn't there to observe suffering like doesn't mean that like suffering, like a sentient being can experience suffering like without anyone having to observe it.
Yeah, so pretty much by definition, only sentient beings are capable of suffering is only capable of being experienced by sentient beings. Thus, if there's no sentient beings, there can be no suffering. That's all I said. I mean, it's basically a tautology.
Yeah. But so, like, what would be the point to not try and achieve objective morality? Like, try and strive for that. Like, what
You
would
can
be?
try to. I mean, it's like trying to achieve something that's false to be true. Like, what does that mean? Like, how can you turn something false to true by trying to achieve it?
Well, if you were to like show like land in the most like isolated village in Africa and just like show them wireless technology, like they would literally think you're a magician. Like they would have no concept of comprehending what you just did to them. Like, and then and if you told them like, yeah, like if you just read some books, you can do this too. Like that's the same thing. Like to them, it's so unimaginable. But at the same time, yeah, if you just quantify some stuff, you can get to it as well.
Yeah. Okay. So if you're saying if
Are we
objective
on
morality,
objective subject?
No, I'm trying to like. That's I said
It
specifically
sounded
like I
like we
don't. I don't.
were.
Well, like my stance to like it isn't that morality is subjective. Is that we should try and like strive to make it objective.
so maybe what you're saying is there may exist an argument for
There could.
morality,
So we should
and
try
we
and
should try
strive
to
for that.
find it. Should it exist, we should really try to find it.
Yeah, and I'm saying that
I don't have a problem with that.
if it could exist, then maybe maybe it should exist. Like maybe like that's how intelligence like evolves, like through
That's
some
a
kind of
question.
subjective like experience.
I don't know about that, but I will agree that like, should objective morality actually exist, it should be something that we should really try to figure out to be knowledgeable of.
Right. So
We can do
we
it.
can't be knowledgeable about like subjective things. Like in the end, we're just gonna eventually figure out the exact mathematical pattern that our brains fire our neurons in. Like, what the fuck are we gonna do with that information? Like that has to mean something. Like that is information. Like we have to apply that somehow.
Just like create hedonic robots at that point.
Would you prefer it if Jack? Either of you?
I don't know if it was just me, but you cut out.
Yeah.
Oh,
you
sorry.
did.
I asked, would you prefer it if morality was subjective or objective?
I would prefer if morality was objective.
You said objective?
Yeah,
Wow,
I was wondering the same thing. Was it objective or subjective?
I would prefer objective.
Yeah, see, that's what I'm saying. I'm saying if this is what I would prefer, and there's already things that are objective, then like why not try and like quantify it?
So is it objectively wrong to eat animals then?
Oh no, no. So to be clear, I would prefer it to be objective, but I have no reason to believe it is objective.
Okay. So
yeah,
you're a subjectivist.
I'm a
then.
subjective.
Is that like an agnostic morality or something like that?
I would say that's atheism.
Ooh, now this gets well, it has the capacity to get a bit complex.
I mean, I think you could argue what the definition of atheism is. I'm more comfortable with the definition that it's not having any reason to believe or not having any evidence to believe.
Yeah, I would agree with you.
And that's my position on moral subjectivity. I have no evidence to believe in objectivity or any reason to believe in objectivity. Thus, I'm a moral subjectivist.
So as a subjectivist, then you wouldn't be able to argue that veganism is wrong.
Not objectively wrong, no. I would argue that by
Yeah, it would be your opinion that it's wrong.
You could phrase it as that, sure.
Okay.
And to be
It's
clear,
not
like,
a very strong position, though.
I mean, you're just basically saying that any moral position by moral subjectivity is not a strong position. Call it. If you want to say that, fine.
It's going to be an opinion, isn't it? If you're a subjectivist, because you can't argue prescriptively as a subjectivist, right?
I can't argue prescriptively for others, no. But what I would say is that something similar to veganism, not necessarily veganism, is, I think, in line with a large portion of people's
And
subjective.
you just said, I think.
Sure.
Okay, so it's your opinion then.
No. What I just said,
So-
I didn't say
Well, yeah, you
my
said,
opinion.
I think.
said yes, which. Do you
Which means
think
it's
that
subjective.
No. What?
It does. It
Any
does.
of my thoughts are like my thought that I'm currently sitting in the US is subjective. I think I'm sitting in the US. Is that subjective?
It's, well, unless you're going to argue that it's objective, sure.
So any knowledge is subjective?
To you, yeah.
I mean, that's just an absurd.
You can't argue prescriptively as a subjectivist. You can't
Okay,
do
you're
it. It's just
making-
incompatible.
a very different thing, now, right?
Subjective is an opinion, objective is a fact.
Yeah, exactly.
Even Terry agrees with me.
Right. And I agree with Terry as well. What I was saying is, I think regarding what is factual, right? So I was not making a value judgment in that statement.
Right.
I
So
was
it
making
would
a factual
be
claim.
it would be objectively true if this were the case, of course, that you don't like the taste of oranges, and it would be objectively true that I do like the taste of oranges, in which case everything is back to subjective.
I think you're missing what I've said. So I am a moral subjectivist. What I said, which I don't know why you're taking issue with, is that
I'm not taking issue, I'm just talking.
Sure. So I think that a large portion of people hold subjective values that are in line with veganism. That is an objective statement. regarding
That's
the subjective
collective
value of
statement,
others.
which is an appeal to popularity.
I'm not trying to say because it's popular that leads me to some conclusion.
So it's
There's
not
no
objective then.
I've never made any claims to objective, man. Like,
No, I know you didn't.
yeah,
I'm
so-
just looking at your position, and if you want to make claims along the lines of the ones I suspect you would like to make, this is speculation on my part, but you would like to say that it's wrong to kill animals for food, for example.
No, so that's why I made that statement earlier, which is that I think for many people, their values are in line with it being, their subjective values are in line with it being wrong for them. And I would say the same of
Right.
myself. I believe it to be wrong. Subjectively.
Okay.
In many cases.
But
To
I
be fair,
don't.
I don't intrinsically think it's wrong to eat meat, but in most cases, yes.
But I think it's wonderful.
Okay.
So where do we go from here? Not that we need to go anywhere, but I mean, just as a rhetorical
I mean,
question.
sure, if you have two subjectivists that fundamentally have different values, I mean, you could argue if they have similar values that they reach a different conclusion from the similar values. You could argue based off, logic and reason and so on. But if they're just subjectively have different values, then yeah, there is no alignment.
There is no argument, I think is what you meant to say there.
I mean, sure, you can't necessarily convince a given person if they have fundamentally different subjective values, according to a subjectivist. Sure.
Okay. Okay, fair enough. What would you make of somebody who said that ace? What would you think about that?
I think you cut out again there.
Oh, sorry. What would you make of somebody who said that they are a moral objectivist?
I would do as I did with Occasionally Consistent and ask him why. And if he has a good argument, then maybe he'll convince me.
How do you think moral objectivity could function as a system?
I don't, which is why I've never heard a good reason for it.
Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough. I'm not going to contest that.
Like, I fundamentally don't see how you would cross the is-out-ought gap. Like, I just don't.
Yeah, you can't really. That's a massive fundamental problem in philosophy. So.
But I mean, could I be wrong? Like, feasibly, I just don't see how.
Yeah, sure. I mean, that's our limitations, right? We don't see how we can cross that is-ought gap. And I think we absolve ourselves of responsibility beyond that, because if we can't figure things out, then I don't think that's our fault.
Sure. So, which side of the fence do you lie on? Objectivity, I presume?
I lie on the side, well, I lean toward the side of subjectivity, but it's not because I would like it to be that way or something. It's just that's how I think it actually is.
Yeah, same here. I mean, I would love to factually be able to tell someone you should act in this manner. Like, that would be awesome.
Yeah, but you recognize that you can't. So we're definitely on the same page. It's hard to argue against. I mean, the only way I can see of getting objectivity to work, and I'm using work in a very, very loose sense here, is if you invoke something like a god, but then that's a whole different debate all in of itself. So
are you familiar with Sam Harris's position at all?
Yes.
So I like that as a cop-out. Like, it is a bit of a cop-out in my view, but I still think it's useful in the sense that it's like, the way I see it, his argument is basically it's technically not objective, but let's all act like it is because we all agree anyway.
Yeah, it masquerades as being objective.
Yeah, and to be honest, I kind of like it, even though it doesn't actually solve the problem. It's just like let's act as if we have. Like, I'm okay with that.
Yeah, which is, I guess, the most we can do, really. I mean, another thing that compels me towards something along those lines is, let's say you and I agree on what morality is about, right? Let's just pretend that we do. And I imagine we probably do anyway. But I think that's all that's required. If we agree on that, then we can derive objective truths from there. Like, if we say that morality is about well-being, for example, then we can agree, I would think, that drinking bleach is objectively bad for your well-being, because that's what we've defined morality to be about. What do you think about something like that?
No, I like that. When I was reading his book, I really like the comparison to health. It's like, what objectively is health is basically the question he was asking. And it's like, well, we all just kind of know what we mean by it, and thus we can make objective claims about what leads to good health. And like his analogy to health, I thought was really good, which I think is similar to what you just said.
Yeah, it's the most useful thing that I've heard that's actually managed to stick in my memory. I think if morality is about anything, it's probably about well-being, because I find it very difficult to talk about morality without talking about well-being.
Yeah, I agree. I think the biggest difference probably comes with whose well-being, but generally, yes.
Yeah, sure.
About well-being.
Yeah,
Like, if I
there
were
are problems with it. I do that, but I
if
think,
I were
like,
to say my
broadly go ahead.
my well-being increases if I put bleach on my butt, would you not believe me?
If we've agreed on what well-being is about, what morality is about, and you want to argue that it increases your well-being, I would still argue that there are objective facts about that would betray what you just said.
Oh, so it shouldn't really matter about me, but more like in the collective?
No. He's just saying he doesn't believe what you said to be true.
Yeah, I think there's observations about doing that we could usually say.
Wouldn't you just be arguing for objective morality at that point? You're telling him what he should do.
Nobody should.
There's no. The thing is though, ultimately, you don't have an argument anymore. Either is you should do something or you shouldn't.
But we're not having an argument. We're having.
Well, no. If somebody says, pouring bleach on your butt, is good for your well-being. You're saying that he shouldn't.
If he can. No, I didn't say that he shouldn't. I said if he can demonstrate that it is good for his well-being, which is what we've agreed the foundation of morality is, then maybe there could be something to discuss there. But I think what would actually happen in that instance is if Ramen, sorry, I forget how to pronounce your name. If he was pouring some toxic substance all over his ass, and me and OC are there, and we're looking at this, we're looking at his ass, right? And we see that it's boiling off and his skin is melting off. I think we could agree that that's not good for his well-being.
But what if it's a cigarette? It's one cigarette where you don't really see what's going on. The burning and the boiling is happening all on the inside, and you can't really tell. So there's no apparent way to object to what's going on.
Well, I mean, I think that's something that would require further investigation in that case.
And this does hinge on the definition of well-being.
That's the other reason I really like Sam Argument's analogy to health. What's health?
Well-being. This is why I find it very difficult to discuss morality without it being about well-being, because I find that it always ties back to it.
So how is that not making the case for like objective morality? Like you're relying on
it's
like things that
objective.
you can quantify easily that like are definitely like quantifiable to make something else
Right.
exist. And I mean that's essentially what other objective things are, anyways.
Sorry, I don't understand your analogy.
No, you're kind of like saying, since math is subjectively accepted, we should talk about objectivity. That's what I'm understanding you as saying.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah, if we all agree a certain metric, there are arguments that can be made on a philosophical level, which can end up with us saying, okay, well, now this is objective. But there's always the objection which you can come up with, which says, well, okay, it ultimately comes back to subjectivity, which is an argument that I do accept.
So subjectively, if you value well-being, then why the hell were the two of you talking about death as your metric?
Because that is the metric of veganism, which is a debate that
And why would you think that?
it's the metric that vegans use. Having talked to vegans for the last 3 years quite intensively and set up a server for this exact purpose, that's the metric they use. You're welcome to present a different one, of course. But,
I mean, at the end of the day, I find little purpose in disagreeing on what other people think. I'll just say that's not what I think. Leave it there.
okay. Well, then I think that stabbing cows in the face is a great laugh and we should do it more often.
Have you ever had anybody make the argument that stabbing cows in the face is vegan?
Yes.
Andy.
Not the first one. Damn it.
Well, not stabbing cows in the face.
That was maybe original.
But yeah, I've been presented with the argument. I mean, people will try to incorporate what I do into veganism to call me vegan, rather than admit that I don't need to go vegan. And I find that pretty dishonest.
I don't at all. I think it's a difference between. So the thing is, veganism is a philosophy, and you can argue that people who eat meat at times can fit the philosophy, while also accepting that like there's two different kind of definitions of veganism. There's a philosophy, but there's also the actions that typically are the outcome of the philosophy.
Well, here's the thing about that. It's like you cannot be a part-time vegan. What they usually argue is that unless you're fully vegan, you're not vegan.
Well, because
right.
that's
The
sticking
philosophy
into
would require
the
that.
assumption that like they switch their beliefs. Like the thing is, like someone who is vegan who can try and change their lifestyle could end up in the exact same situation that SD is in, but they're vegan and SD is not. So like someone will obviously ask, whoa, like you're living in the exact same situation, why do you have different beliefs?